Heyo everybody, Clipper here, and welcome to my corner of the internet. I have no idea what I'm doing, but that's okay, that's what we're here for. We're here to learn, and specifically we're gonna be learning Korean together. Yay! I've been wanting to relearn Korean for a good long while now, and I thought it'd be pretty cool to bring you along on the journey. You'll notice that my game is already in Korean, which might feel like diving into the deep end for some, but I find that it helps me study because it's easier to look things up, which trust me, I will be doing a lot. There's already so many resources for learning Hangul, so I won't be going over it today, but if you would like to hear my 2 cents, then let me know. Alright, so to get started here, I'm just gonna switch from my main account to an alternate account. That way we can enjoy the full story together. Oh gosh. Yeah, we're not dealing with this today. Actually, that reminds me of something. When you switch your game text over to another language, you'll get an end-user license agreement the next time you log in. Just click all the boxes, you'll be fine. Alright, let's get the show on the road. First off, we see game 시작, game being pretty clearly Konglish, and 시작 meaning start or beginning. So, 시작하자!
그러니까 너희는 세상 밖에서 표류해 온 거라고? 이곳을 떠나 다음 세상으로 가려고 하는데 낯선 신이 너희 앞을 가로막았다는 거야?
이방인, 너의 여정은 여기까지다. 누구? 천리의 주관자. 여기서 인간 아이의 방정을 끝내라.
Alright, so this is a pretty good stopping point. It might not feel like much now, but as we get more comfortable with the language, we'll be able to get through things a little bit faster. I'll be going over common words based off of Topic's 1000 Common Words list and important grammar points from the site How to Study Korean, both of which I'll link in the description below. I'm going to be pretty meticulous about this, so if you're learning along with me, grab a notebook. We're going to be writing some stuff down. Alright, so taking things as they come, we start off with 그러니까. This acts as so then or and so. Next we have 너희는, 너 being the informal way of saying you, and 너희 making it plural. This 는 is known as the topic particle. Basically, it allows us to continue talking about something without actually having to repeat it. 세상 means world, and then this next bit, 밖에서, can actually be split into two parts. 밖 meaning outside, and 에서 meaning from. So this entire chunk, 세상 밖에서, means from outside the world. This part doesn't really add anything for us as learners, so we're just gonna skip it. Alright, now this next bit, 온 거라고, doesn't exactly divide up in a way that's intuitive to English speakers, but that's okay, I'm gonna walk you through it. First we have 오다 meaning to come, followed by 은거, which puts it in its noun form. You may notice that I like to introduce verbs in what's called dictionary form, and again, this is just to make things easier to look up later down the line. Finally, this 라고 ending indicates that Paimon is quoting someone, in this case, the traveler. So, putting all the pieces together, that would be, so you're saying you came from outside the world? Alright, moving right along. First off, we have 이 meaning this. Later, we'll also see 그 and 저, which both mean there. Kind of like how in Spanish they have different words for there depending on how far something is, Korean does something very similar. 곳 means place, so 이곳 would be this place. And connected to it, we see another particle. This time we've got the object particle. Say we have the example sentence, I kicked the ball would be the object. And since there is an object here, that implies an action. And sure enough, upcoming 떠나다 means to leave. This isn't actually on the list, but I figured since we're going to be seeing it enough, I may as well just add it in anyways. So we know someone's leaving this place, but this sentence doesn't actually tell us who. This is where the topic particle from our last example comes into play. Since in our last sentence, Paimon used 너희는 to refer to the travelers, it's implied that she is still talking about the travelers. Alright, next up, literally. 다음 means next, and we've already seen 세상 before, so 다음 세상, next world. What's new, however, is this 으로 ending, which indicates direction. And wouldn't you know it, upcoming 가다 actually means to go. Now, 려고 indicates intention, so 가려고 on its own would actually be with the intention of going. However, since it's followed by 하다, which on its own just means to do, we can actually interpret the whole chunk, 가려고 하다, as intend to go. Now, this 는다 ending is a little bit tricky since it doesn't actually have a clean one-to-one translation in English, which is unfortunate considering how often it's used. Generally, we understand it to mean although or but. Alright, so putting everything together and carrying over the topic from last time, we have you intend to leave this place and go to the next world, but... And this is where we meet the unknown god. While I wouldn't worry about this part too much in terms of vocabulary, there are a few grammatical things that I would like to point out. First off, I'd like to point out how adjectives are actually treated very similarly to verbs. In fact, as we come across some more relevant ones, I will actually introduce them in dictionary form. This means that we actually have to conjugate them using nian in order to modify anything. Verbs can do something similar, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Secondly, I would like to point out our subject particle. If you'll remember our example sentence, I kicked the ball, this time I would be the subject. This particle is a little annoying though, because depending on whether your noun ends with a consonant or a vowel, it will either appear as e or ka. Alright, so now that we've implied that we're going to describe the unknown god, let's see what they're up to. So the first thing we see here is nahi apu, ap being front. But instead of saying this as your front, we usually interpret this as in front of you. Now for garomakta, you don't need to worry about the whole thing, just walk away with makta, which means to block or to stop. At makes this past tense, so in essence, your way was blocked by an unknown god. Alright, so this next bit actually kind of confuses me, because you may remember unga being past tense noun form, nunga is actually present tense. I don't fully understand why this is how it was phrased, so if someone could walk me through it, I would very much appreciate it. Now, this ya ending is very casual, and from what I understand, ending a sentence with unga nunga is also a pretty casual thing to do. So everything about the way Paimon is speaking with the traveler implies that they've gotten pretty close. Alright, let's see what the unknown god has to say. So right off the bat, we see she calls our travelers ibangin, which means stranger. Technically this is singular, and there is a way to make it explicitly plural, but a lot of times in Korean, if they deem it unnecessary, they'll just drop it completely. Now, after nahi, this ending ri is usually interpreted as an apostrophe s, but in this case we can actually see it as changing you into your. Also, I've noticed that whenever the syllable is used specifically in this context, it usually relaxes into more of an e or ye sound, so nahi-e. Now, apparently yeojang refers to the route or plan of a journey. I would actually rather you wrote down yaheng, since it's a lot more common and refers to the journey itself. And finally, we have yogi meaning here and gaji meaning until. I believe in the English translation they say your journey ends here. This is a very common way of phrasing it in Korean. Alright, now we've got Lamine asking nugu, which just means who. Here, since she trails off, it's kind of implied that she's asking who are you, but later down the line we'll be able to see the full phrasing. Don't worry about this part, like, at all. If it comes up again, I'll go over it, but for now, just leave it. Okay, so now we see yagyuso, which still means here, only this is used when we are describing a dynamic action that is happening here. This is actually a contraction, which I will point out when we see it. These brackets here are actually pretty new to me, but from what I understand, they kind of act like quotation marks. Inside the brackets, we see ingan and ai, ingan being human and ai meaning child. We could probably guess that she is referring to humanity as a whole, and the fact that they're being called children right now is pretty telling of her character, actually. Again, this word's not very helpful, so we're gonna skip it. And then we've got gneda, though I'd actually rather you remembered gnada, since it's a little bit more common. Now, these two are a little bit frustrating since your dictionary will tell you that they both mean to finish, but they are used in slightly different contexts. Whereas gneda emphasizes that someone finished something, gnada emphasizes the thing that has actually been finished. Now, this nora ending had me confused for literal months, but I finally figured it out. So the unknown god is using a level of speech that is formal, but not polite. Nowadays it's usually seen in the written form and not really anywhere else. What's weird about this ending though is that it's actually pretty old-fashioned. Like, I've only ever seen it in Bible verses. I love how the sentence alone reveals so much about the unknown god's character. I'll leave a bookmark for that scene in case you would like to go back and listen with your newfound sense of wisdom and understanding. Alright, moving on. So before we actually pick our traveler, I'd like to draw your attention to this little line here. 쌍둥이 중 한 명 선택. 쌍둥이 means twin, in case you were curious, and then 중 is middle or between, so between the twins. Han is the native Korean number for one, and myung is what we call a counter. Kind of like how in English we say a cup of coffee or a bowl of soup. Korean does that, but for like everything. And myung specifically counts people. I mentioned that this was the native Korean number for one. That's because Korean actually has two number systems. Native Korean, which is primarily used in counting, and then Sino-Korean, which is used in things like money, addresses, and phone numbers. Finally, we have 선택, which means choice. In English, we would probably phrase this more like a command and say something like, pick between the twins, but in Korean they treat it more like a character selection label. I picked Salmin from a man account, so I'm gonna go with either this time around. So now we have this little prompt. 당신의 이름은 적어주세요. So we've already learned that na is an informal way of saying you. 당신 is a much more formal way of saying you. 이름 is name, so 당신의 이름 would be your name. Never actually seen that, I've heard it's good though. So 적다 is kind of like to jot down, but a more common way of saying to write is actually 쓰다. This 주세요 ending is a very common way of saying please do something. So altogether this would be please write down your name.
So his name is Thomas, but with a silent Z. It's quirky.
I just gave him an unorthodox spelling for Clipper, and now we are ready to go. So first off, huh? The thing is, hyung is what boys call their older brothers, which is especially confusing since Lamin consistently calls Ether oppa, which implies a younger sister, older brother kind of dynamic. So I'm just going to casually interpret this not as hyung, but as a shortened version of hyungjae, which is sibling. A lot of times this little ah is tacked on at the end as a form of endearment, or when you're calling someone. Moving along, 기다리다 is to wait, and anda is frustratingly flexible in its translation. Sometimes it can be used as I can't or that sucks, but this time I think it's more like no! What happens next? You'll just have to wait till next time. Anyway guys, thank you so much for checking out the channel. Let me know if you've got any format suggestions or if you'd like me to go over flavor text. Maybe if I've made some mistakes, please let me know. I'm learning. I'll have all my resources linked in the description below, so that would be topics 1000 common words list, the site How to Study Korean, Naver Dictionary, and Anki flashcards. So once again, thank you, take care, and I'll see you across the ecliptic. Bye bye. There's gonna be a dumpster fire and I'm here for it.